In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful. My dear students, I welcome you to the 5th lecture of research methodology. In the previous lecture, we have been learning about formulating hypotheses and formulating research questions. We have already discussed in detail how to formulate the research hypothesis. And we were learning about formulating the research questions. Some topics from that topic were left. And in today's lecture, we are going to cover those topics. Number 1, we would be learning about narrowing the research questions, limiting and delimiting research questions. This is the part of the previous lecture in which we were studying about formulating the research questions. And another topic which we are studying in today's lecture is research process or process of research, or the steps which we follow for doing or conducting research. And if time allowed, we would look at the qualities of a researcher, that what qualities a researcher possesses to be a successful researcher and to conduct a successful research study. So let's start the lecture today. In the last lecture, we have studied about the steps in formulation of research questions. We have studied about 10 steps which we follow to formulate research questions. And now we are studying about narrowing and clarifying the research questions. Narrowing, clarifying, and even redefining your questions is essential to the research process. Means it's an important task for the researcher to narrow down the research question and clarify the research question, because if the research question is a general or vague question, it would not be a good question, and if it is not clear, the sense is not clear, then it would not be considered as a good research question. So on the part of the researcher, it is his responsibility to narrow down and clarify the research questions, and if needed, he needs to redefine the questions to make it more effective, more clear, and more specific. Formulating the right questions should be seen as an iterative process that is informed by reading and doing at all stages. So it's the responsibility of the researcher to formulate the right questions. With the passage of time, he can redefine, he can rephrase his research questions to make them better. Qualitative research questions pose research questions. In qualitative research questions are very important as compared to objectives and hypotheses. The research questions are given the most important place. 2 types of qualitative research questions to focus a study's purpose. There are 2 types of questions, research questions are used in a study. One is the central question, that is broad question that asks for explanation of the central phenomenon. That is actually the major question from which your study started. The question which initially arises in researcher's mind, or which has motivated the researcher to get the answer. That research question for which the researcher conducts the whole study, that main question or central question is the main question, major question. That is called central question. And the other questions which are when we conduct the study to get the answers of central question, then some other facts and findings are also given, and those facts and findings answer the sub-questions. Sub-questions are those questions which are used in addition to the central question. Questions that narrow the focus of the study. These are the minor questions, we can say. Say for example, our study is about uh, smartphone plays an important role. Does smartphone play an important role in improving students' listening skills? This is our major question, and our minor questions or sub questions would be: are students motivated to learn? Are students willing to learn through this technique or not? Such kind of questions can be the minor questions or sub questions. But we are conducting the study to get the answers of the central question. Summarizing the research questions: what topic, idea of study are you interested in? First thing you have to consider is, excuse me, what topic or idea of study are you interested in? You have to, first of all, you have to decide the idea or the topic on which you are going to conduct the study, which is interesting for you. Second, what has already been done in this area, the literature review. You have to review the literature to look at the already existing studies which are already done in that area. Number 3, what major outcomes dependent variable are interested in, and what intervention independent variables are you interested in? You have to look at the literature, already existing literature, and then you have to decide what would be your topic of research and what would be your independent variables and dependent variables. In the last lecture, I have explained the difference between independent and dependent variables. Here I am telling you again, independent variables are those variables which are not affected by the change in dependent variables. And dependent variables are opposite to the independent variables because they depend on the independent variables. If the independent variable is changed, then the dependent variable also changes accordingly. For example, if you are using a new strategy for teaching one skill, say for example listening skill to your students, then the strategy would be the independent variable, because if you change the strategy, the results means learning achievement would be the dependent variable and it would be changed according to the dependent variable. If strategy changes, achievement would be changed. So independent variable is a variable which may change, but it is not affected by the change in dependent variable. But the dependent variable changes if the independent variable is changed. Number 5, are you looking for differences or a relationship association? You have to look at your topic. You have to critically evaluate your topic of research, and you have to decide whether you are looking for a difference or a relationship association. For example, if your topic is using a specific strategy for improving listening skills, say for example using smartphone for improving listening skills, so here we are trying to find the relationship between them, between these two variables, whether using smartphone for learning is effective or not, does it affect students' achievement or not. And another example may be the same which we are already using in the previous lectures, that is motivation and incentives. If we increase workers' incentive, does their motivation also increases or not? That kind of questions are the difference or relationship association questions, because we are trying to find out the relationship between two variables. We are trying to find out the effects of changing one variable and its effects on the other variable. You can say it cause and effect variables, cause and effect relationship between the two variables. Number 6, to what group population do you wish to apply your results? You have to decide beforehand to what group or population do you wish to apply your results. If you want to apply your results to secondary school level students, then you have to take sample from the same secondary level students, and if you want to generalize your results to the graduate students or university students, you have to take population or sample from the same area, from the same age group. on which you want to generalize your results. So before conducting the research, you have to decide about the population. Who would be your population? University students, or school or college students, or which age criteria you want to specify for your population or for your sample. Number 7, what is your specific research question? The specific research question is the central question which you want to explore, and you want to get answer of that question. So you have to specify your research question. First of all, you have to narrow it down, you have to clarify the question, you have to specify the question. It should be a specific research question. It should not be a general question. Number 8, what answer to your question do you expect to find? Means if you are conducting a study and you have formulated a research question, now you have, using your common sense, you have to formulate your research hypothesis. Research hypothesis would be related to your expectations. What results, what do you expect from this study? For example, you say you expect that smartphone plays an important role in improving students' listening skills. So it's your first hypothesis, and it is corresponding hypothesis to the central question, research question. Why? And in the end, you have to accept some hypothesis and you have to reject some hypothesis. Maybe your null hypothesis of no change will be rejected, and your alternative hypothesis would be selected, or vice versa. Number 9, why is this question important today or relevance? Means why you are conducting study on this topic, why it is important today, what is the significance of your research this time. Limitations of research question. Whereas research question in quantitative research restricts and commit researchers to the variable that will be addressed, research questions in qualitative research are broad enough to permit the discovery of the specific experiences, events, artifacts, concepts, or other empirical or analytical subjects that will ultimately be the focus of the study. So you have to, your research question has some limitations. If it is a qualitative research or it is a quantitative research, you have to follow the rules. Limitations of research questions. Research questions cannot be formulated along with hypothesis. Means your research questions can be, there can be 3 or 4 research questions or 2 research questions, but and your research hypothesis can be 1 or 2 maybe. Research questions should be researchable. Means the research question which you are formulating, you should take care that is it researchable or not. It should be a valid question, researchable question. It should be significant, so that you are giving it lots of time to conduct a research and findings and reaching the conclusions. So the question you are raising, it should be researchable. Research question should be feasible. Means it should be feasible for you as a researcher to conduct study on that. It should be feasible for you in many ways. For collecting data, it should be feasible for writing on it. And research question should be evocative. Research question should be relevant to the field. Means whatever research question you are formulating, it should be relevant to your field. It should not be like you are a student of linguistics and you are doing research on literature or education. So try to be specific, and try to formulate the research question that is relevant to the field. Research question should be clear. Whenever you are formulating a research question, it should be clear. Means clearly understandable. It should not have double meanings. It should be a specific question which should give only single sense. Research question should be ethical. Means whatever research question you are formulating, it should be ethical. It should be ethical in your society to address that question. Say for example, the topic you are selecting, it should be acceptable to be researched in your society. It should not be a taboo. Research question, or it should not be a question when we get findings and we are unable to share those findings and conclusion with the public. It should be ethical so that we should be able to share the findings and conclusion later on with public, because research is a public thing. It's not a private thing. You cannot hide it somewhere. You have to ultimately, if you are doing your research, your MPhil thesis or PhD thesis on some topic, you have to later on share the results with public. You have to give viva. You have to give a public defense of your thesis. So the topic or research question you are selecting, it should be ethical. Research question should not be too long. Whatever research question you are formulating, try to keep it limited. It should not be too long so that you may not be able to complete it in the specified time and resources. So the next point is research question should address the data. Means it should be relevant to whatever you are conducting study on. The data should be relevant. It should not happen that data is something else and your research question is not corresponding to it. Your research question is something else. You have to take care that your research question should address the data. Research question is limited within the research problem. So you have to limit your research question within the limits. You have to keep it in the limits of the research problem. You have to keep in mind that what is the major question, what is the major research problem which you want to explore. So you have to keep your major question in that limit. Delimitation of the research question. Qualitative research questions are limited in their scope and wording. The contents of the question are according to the phenomenon to be studied. Research questions may consist of central question and several sub-questions. There may be one central question and there may be sub-questions as well. Sub-question may be more than two. Questions may be reformulated or refinement. Means questions may be reformulated or redefined. You have formulated the questions, major questions and your sub-questions. Later on, with the passage of time, you can rephrase those questions. The sense would remain same, but you can use better words if you want to redefine your refine your research questions to make them better. Sub-questions may be specific or broad. In qualitative research, sub-questions may be formulated during the study. So in qualitative research, sub-questions may be formulated during the study. When we are conducting a study, during the study we can formulate research questions if we need. That's all for delimiting the research questions or limiting or narrowing the research questions. So far up till now we have completed the topic of formulating the hypothesis as well as formulating the research questions in detail. If you have any questions regarding these two topics, we can discuss them in the interactive online class later on. And now let's have a look on the next topic. Because we have some time, we can cover another topic as well. Now let's have a look on research process or the steps we follow for conducting a successful research study. First of all, number one is formulating the research problem. You have to formulate the research problem, which we have already discussed in detail. Number two, extensive literature survey or literature review. You have to review the already existing literature in the same field or area. Step 3, developing hypothesis. Later on, after reviewing the survey, reviewing the literature, you have to formulate or develop hypothesis. Number 4, prepare the research design. You have to prepare a complete research design in which you would decide your sample, your data collection technique, your research method beforehand, before conducting the study, before starting your research study. Number 5, determining sample design. You have to decide beforehand what type of sampling technique you would use for conducting study? What type of sample you need according to the nature of your research or research questions. Number 6, collecting data. Number 7, execution of the project. Number 8, analysis of data. You have to collect the data using any data collection technique that would be we would be studying in the next lecture, the data collection techniques. You have to select a data collection technique. You have to collect the data. After collecting the data, you have to analyze the data so that you can get the findings. And then hypothesis testing, you have to, according to the findings and conclusions, you have to test the hypothesis and give conclusion. Number 10, generalization and interpretation. You have to interpret the results and generalize it to the general public. Preparation of report or preparation of the results. In the end, when you have completed the whole study, you have collected the data, you have analyzed the data, you have got findings and results, then the last step is to report the data. You have to start writing up your thesis, in which you have to write about how you analyze the data. You have to write each and everything in your thesis, how you collected the data, what data collection tools you have used, how you collected the data, how you analyze the data, what techniques you used for analyzing the data, what were the major findings, what are the conclusion, and what hypotheses are accepted and which hypothesis is rejected. Here are the major steps in research process. Number 1, identify and defining research problem or opportunity. We have discussed it in lots of detail. And next is planning the research design. You have to plan the research. You have to select a research method, sampling technique, population, sample. Planning the research design, on second number, you have to plan your research design. Number 3, selecting a research method. You have to select a research method, which data collection method, which research method you are going to use, qualitative or quantitative research method, which research method you are going to use to collect the data for your study. Selecting a sampling procedure. You have to select a sampling procedure. And then data collection, you have to collect the data, evaluating the data, and preparing and presenting the research report. Then when you have collected the data, you have analyzed the data on SPSS or eViews, you have analyzed the data. After analyzing the data, what are the findings and results? You have to report them in a written form, like in the form of thesis. This is research design, which we have already studied in steps of research. Types of research we have already studied. So that's all for today's lecture, because lecture time is completed, and the point which was left, that was qualities of a researcher, we would be studying that in the next lecture. In the next lecture, we would be studying about qualities of a researcher and ethics of research or research ethics. Thank you so much for listening to this lecture. If you have any queries, if you have any questions, you can discuss them in the interactive class, online class on weekend, on Sunday. Thank you so much, students. Have a good day. Take care. Allah Hafiz.